every NFL team would like a redo in the draft one way or another, because draft busts happen all the time. And that's why in this video, we're going to give every NFL team the opportunity to undo and redo one of their bad NFL draft picks since 2007. Is it a new franchise quarterback? Is it a new electric skill player? Are we going to undo that one time you traded up into the second round for a kicker? You know who you are. Before we do, we're going to lay out some ground rules. The first rule, every player can only be taken once. As bad as the 2013 draft was, I can't just give DeAndre Hopkins to everybody. The second rule, if multiple teams pick from the same draft, the team with the higher draft pick gets first priority. The third rule, we are not undoing trade-ups. You made your bed, now you're gonna lie in it. Though we are gonna switch out the mattress. The fourth rule, the players selected in the redraft must have still been available in the real draft when the team in question selects them. So why 2007? It's the beginning of the Roger Goodell era. Why am I wearing a Pacers shirt? Because they're in the NBA Finals and they let me sing for them one time, so I owe them. So with all that out of the way, let's go through and see who sucked for each team, and let's add in who they should have taken. Yes, I know this is hindsight, but that's the whole point of the video. The Arizona Cardinals. Remember after the 2018 NFL Draft when Josh Rosen boldly claimed that there were 9 mistakes made ahead of him? Cute times, right? However, he was wrong. That's why, with the 10th pick in the 2018 NFL redraft, instead of Josh Rosen, the Cardinals will select Lamar Jackson. The Cardinals, and every team that is, made a mistake by passing on Lamar Jackson, who was taken with the last pick in the first round and 22 picks after Josh Rosen. And as it stands today, Josh Rosen has only one more career win than Lamar Jackson has career MVPs. Rosen flamed out of the Cardinals organization after one season, and Lamar has been torching the entire league ever since he took over for Joe Flacco halfway through his rookie season. Congratulations, Arizona. Your mulligans arrived. Now for f***'s sake, give Jackson an O-line. The Atlanta Falcons. There are some players who aren't bad and they don't do anything wrong, they just don't realize their full potential for one reason or another. Perhaps the greatest example of this over the last 5 years is Kyle Pitts. He's had flashes of fulfilling his full potential, and his career is far from over. But as of now, he's never been able to fully put it together for a complete season of elite production. You know who has, though? On multiple occasions, the player taken one pick after Kyle Pitts in the 2021 draft, Ja'Marr Chase. Chase immediately burst on the scene with the Bengals and his rapport with Joe Burrow, and was one of the best receivers in the NFL since the beginning of his career. Ja'Marr Chase has the same amount of touchdowns in his last 8 games as Kyle Pitts has in his entire career. So before you drink the "this is gonna be Pitts' year" Kool-Aid, just imagine a scenario where the Falcons took the LSU receiver away from the Bengals. On second thought, this game sucks. I don't want to play anymore. The Baltimore Ravens. In 2013, the Ravens needed to find a replacement for the recently departed Hall of Famer in Ed Reed, and in doing so, they selected safety Matt Elam. Elam started by default in his rookie season and was ultimately mediocre, and he's now a member of the Massachusetts Pirates of the Indoor Football League. So let's get a guy who was a much better defensive back throughout his career. Instead of Matt Elam, with the 32nd pick in the 2013 NFL redraft, the Ravens are selecting Darius Slay. Slay has more defensive touchdowns than Elam had sacks, picks, forced fumbles, and fumble recoveries combined. Slay was a staple of both the Lions and the secondaries for several years, and he has 6 Pro Bowls, including in 2017, where he notched a first-team All-Pro. Do I feel good about making the Ravens a better team? No, I don't, but I have to do it in good faith. The Buffalo Bills. The miserable 2013 draft continues. Geno Smith was the consensus top quarterback, but the Bills surprised everybody by picking E.J. Manuel over Smith with the 16th pick. Smith didn't become a legitimately good starter in the NFL until 9 years into his career, which is absolutely unheard of. But since E.J. Manuel was not very good, we are going to give Buffalo arguably the best skill player from this draft, DeAndre Hopkins. Manuel was remarkably unproductive, as he won 6 games in his career. To put that in perspective, DeAndre Hopkins had 5 All-Pro selections. In his heyday, Hopkins was a quarterback-proof receiver, a contested catch machine, and one of the most consistent wide receivers of the 2010s. For a Bills team that's had inconsistent pass catchers over the last decade, Hopkins would be a perfect remedy. The Carolina Panthers. Kelvin Benjamin was far from a bad player in his heyday. He was a 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie year, and in the first 2 years that he played, he combined for 16 touchdowns. The Panthers even exercised his 5th-year option, but they would soon find out that if there's one thing Kelvin Benjamin hated, it's exercise. He was traded to Buffalo during his 4th year in the league, and he stopped playing football entirely after 2018. Minus a weird 1-year stint on the Giants practice squad. As decent as Kelvin Benjamin was, they would have been much better off selecting, with the 28th pick in the 2014 NFL redraft, Davante Adams. Davante Adams is everything you could ask for in a receiver. He was reliable, fast, a crisp route runner, and he was named a first-team All-Pro 3 years in a row. And those 3 years were after Kelvin Benjamin played his last snap in the NFL. Pair him with Cam Newton, and maybe Carolina takes home a Super Bowl. The Chicago Bears. I don't entirely feel good about this one, because I don't think Mitch Trubisky was that bad of a starter in Chicago. Just kind of meh. When you're a quarterback picked 2nd overall, you have lofty expectations. Bears fans hated him so much that he was booed at a Bulls game 1 day after he was drafted. What the flying f***? Mitch Trubisky was far from bad in Chicago. He had a 29-21 record as a starter, a 54-37 touchdown to interception ratio, and even led the Bears to the postseason a couple times. To those who hate Mitch Trubisky, is the MVP a joke to you? However, he didn't fill the justifiably lofty expectations that he had when he was picked 2nd overall, and he signed with Buffalo after the 2020 season. Even though Mitch Trubisky wasn't terrible in Chicago, we're gonna undo this selection and have the Bears take Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is already one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, and his career isn't even half over. His list of accolades is insane, and he's at the center of the modern-day NFL dynasty. However, it is very hard to say that Mahomes would have the same level of success in Chicago that he's had in Kansas City, because Mahomes was set up for success like no other quarterback in NFL history. He sat behind Alex Smith for a year, his head coach is the quarterback/Waffle House whisperer, and he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce at his disposal. The Cincinnati Bengals. Now, as a Bengals fan, and I mean this with all the sincerity in the world, I wanted John Ross to pan out so badly. He just never did. He seemed like a good dude, and he really had flashes of being the exciting, lightning-quick player he was at Washington. He just never panned out. He was limited to 733 yards in his 4-year stint in Cincinnati, which is not good for a player who was taken 1 pick before Patrick Mahomes. Though his draft blunder may have been what led the Bengals to drafting Joe Burrow, so it kind of worked out in the end. The Bengals defense had stunk since the decline of Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins. So, instead of John Ross, with the 9th pick in the 2017 draft, the Bengals are going to take TJ Watt. Watt has been one of the best defensive players in the NFL over the last decade. He's been a 4-time first-team All-Pro, he was the 2021 Defensive Player of the Year, and he's made 7 Pro Bowls. Plus, if people still cling to the fact that JJ Watt could be a Bengal several years after he retires, why not get the next best thing? The Cleveland Browns. I think this goes without saying, but I could go with a lot of people here. Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, Trent Richardson, Corey Coleman, Cameron Irving. I promise you that last guy is real. But nope, for this one, we're going right back to the 2014 draft. And you might be like, ooh, who are they going to pick instead of Johnny Manziel? Oh no. Johnny Manziel was not the biggest Browns bust of the 2014 draft. That honor goes to Justin Gilbert. Gilbert spent 2 problematic and lackluster seasons in Cleveland before he was traded to Pittsburgh in 2016 for a 2018 6th round pick. So let's go on a little adventure. That pick was traded for Sammy Coates and a 2019 7th round pick, and that 2019 7th round pick was one of the picks that was used to acquire Jarvis Landry. But in this scenario, the Browns are going to rightfully avoid Justin Gilbert and take a player they should have taken with the 8th overall pick. He's arguably the greatest defensive tackle of the 21st century, and he was taken 6 spots after Justin Gilbert, Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is exactly the kind of player that every AFC North team needs to stay alive. He was an elite member of the Rams defensive line for all 10 seasons of his career. He was a Pro Bowler in all 10 of his seasons. He was an All-Pro in 8 of his 10 career seasons, and he even won a Super Bowl that I refuse to talk about. He's an absolute monster, and pairing him with Myles Garrett for 7 seasons would just be diabolical. The Dallas Cowboys. It's always wild to add insult to injury when you trade up in the NFL draft for a player who's ultimately mediocre. And Morris Claiborne was exactly that kind of player. He was serviceable, I guess, but he didn't live up to the high expectations he had coming out of LSU. You know who was worthy of the 6th overall pick? A player taken 4 spots after Morris Claiborne, Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore was ridiculous in his NFL career. He was a stud for the Bills and Patriots for over half a decade, then he went the Jadeveon Clowney route of signing 1-year deals with half the league. During his tenure as a stud, 5 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pros, and he won the 2019 NFL Defensive Player of the Year award. He was the lockdown corner that Cowboys fans pretend that Trayvon Diggs is. The Denver Broncos. In 2016, the Broncos drafted Paxton Lynch, who was John Elway's wet dream. Tall, white, and cannon-armed. The Broncos traded up 5 spots to draft Paxton Lynch, who spent his entire 2-year career with Denver as a backup to Trevor Siemian.
Hey, I remember that guy.
Despite John Elway's undying mission to find his clone, the Broncos would have been much better off passing on Paxton Lynch and drafting Chris Jones. Jones has been a monster for the Chiefs since he was drafted out of the 2nd round in 2016. So much so that Chris Jones has more career sacks than Paxton Lynch has career completions. Jones has been an All-Pro in each of the last 3 seasons and a Pro Bowler in each of the last 6 seasons. He's bound for the Hall of Fame, and he signed a massive 5-year contract extension in March of 2024. However, in this hypothetical, Denver gets an anchor for their defensive line. The Broncos don't begin a cycle of quarterbacks that ends with them Mike Ditkaing their way into Russell Wilson, and the Chiefs' defensive line gets significantly less annoying. I mean, we should have seen this coming. We all got to see Chris Jones' sack ability up close and personal at the 2016 NFL Combine. Huh? Who's with me? The Detroit Lions. As good as the Lions are right now, they could have been even better had their 3rd overall pick from 2020, Jeff Okudah, panned out even a little bit. However, Jeff Okudah was pedestrian in his 3 years with the Lions, and he has since bounced around the league. He was traded to Atlanta for a 2023 5th round pick, and that pick was used in a trade-up with Green Bay to select a defensive player who actually panned out. But we're all about undoing the oopsie daisies in this video. Instead of Jeff Okudah, with the 3rd pick in the 2020 draft, the Lions are going to take, and this might be a hot take, Tristan Wirfs. Tristan Wirfs has been one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL since he was taken 10 picks after Jeff Okudah. He's been a 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, and he kind of just f***ed around and won a Super Bowl in his rookie year. Could this have crowded the Lions' already talented O-line? Of course. Would this have given the Lions an opportunity to pass on Penei Sewell and select Pat Surtain the following year? Lord have mercy on our souls. The Green Bay Packers. The Packers had high hopes for Justin Harrell when they took him with the 17th pick in 2007. However, Green Bay should have known that the only good things to come out of Tennessee are Peyton Manning, half the music industry, and the idea to have drag queens reading to children. Harrell had a rough 4-year stint in the NFL, as he showed up to his rookie camp out of shape and proceeded to go from injury to injury in his 4 years with Green Bay. Because of that, we're going to pass on Justin Harrell and have the Packers select Joe Staley. Staley was a cornerstone of the 49ers offensive line for 13 seasons. Staley was a member of the 2010s All-Decade team, which is a decade that Justin Harrell barely got to play in. Perhaps if the Packers had a better offensive line, then Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be on McAfee every Tuesday saying that Jimmy Kimmel gave everyone AIDS. The Houston Texans. The Texans haven't had a ton of misses in the draft. unless you count Will Fuller's ACL or Deshaun Watson's moral compass. One of those misses, however, was Kevin Johnson, who was selected with the 16th pick in 2015 out of Wake Forest. He had the best game of his career against Zach Mettenberger, which is a lot like a defensive tackle saying they had the best game of their career against Montario Hardesty. Johnson played out his rookie deal in Houston, then played for Buffalo and Cleveland, and then quietly faded off into the sunset. But let's not pick a player who quietly fades away. Instead of Kevin Johnson, the Houston Texans are going to select Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters was a ball hawk from the get-go. He's currently tied with Tyrann Mathieu for the most interceptions in the NFL since 2015, and he hasn't even played since 2023. He also has the most pick sixes in the NFL from that time, as he has 7 since 2015. Kevin Johnson, however, has 1 career pick. The Texans had a cornerback dilemma, and it looks like they picked the wrong one. Now we're picking the right one. The Indianapolis Colts. Jerry Hughes had a long and productive NFL career. The only problem is that he had that productive career after he left the Colts. Hughes had 6 sacks in his 3 seasons with Indy before he was traded to Buffalo, where there he became a solid starter for 8 seasons. The Colts, on the other hand, were coming to the end of the Dallas Clark era, and they needed to replace a player of his caliber. So who are they going to get instead of Jerry Hughes? That's right, Robert Natty Light Gronkowski. Gronk is one of the most productive tight ends in NFL history. He wasn't always healthy, but when he was, boy was he good. He played a grand total of 9 seasons with the Patriots and 3 with the Bucs, and he won 4 Super Bowls. He totaled 621 receptions, 9,286 yards, 92 touchdowns, 647 boat parties, but most importantly, no murders. What a guy. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Luke Joeckel had a limited career in Jacksonville, and that's a tough prognosis for a guy who was picked 2nd overall in the NFL draft. 4 seasons with Jacksonville and a whole lot of nothing. Instead of a whole lot of nothing with Luke Joeckel, let's give them a player who is a whole lot of something. Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson, who was picked 2 years later, he's going to Canton. His list of accolades is sky high, and he's still going strong even after 12 seasons in the NFL. He's such a good offensive lineman, he's literally named after something a running back can run through when an O-lineman does his job. The Kansas City Chiefs. Jonathan Baldwin had a miserable 2-year tenure in Kansas City. Bad performance, a lack of progression, and he even got hurt in a locker room fight. When Andy Reid took over as head coach, he was shipped off from Kansas City to San Francisco for A.J. Jenkins, who, get this, also sucked. We're going to consider the Jonathan Baldwin pick null and void as long as the Chiefs take Cameron Hayward. Cameron Hayward has been a Hall of Fame level defensive tackle with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he spent his entire career with them. He has 88.5 sacks and 4 first-team All-Pro nods. Giving Kansas City an anchor up the middle would allow them to speed up their rebuild that took place in the early 2010s. Before I get to the second half of the video, if you like what you've seen so far, subscribe to the channel. I've got plenty of sports content, both long form and short form, as I have plenty of clips I like to film every now and then. When the NFL season comes, I'll be putting out plenty of content, and I can't wait to get it all underway. And now to the rest of the video, and I'll be moving on to what may be the biggest can I have that one back pick on my list. The Las Vegas Raiders. The first pick Roger Goodell ever announced was arguably the worst one he's ever announced.
With the first pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select quarterback Jamarcus Russell, LSU.
Lane Kiffin, if you're watching this, first of all, hi. But also, you're either gonna cry or because Lane Kiffin wanted Calvin Johnson, but Al Davis wanted Jamarcus Russell, and he wouldn't be told otherwise. Al Davis even wrote a letter to Lane Kiffin criticizing him for rightfully being a bitch about the situation. I do realize that you did not want us to draft Jamarcus Russell. He is a great player. Get over it and coach this team on the field. That is what you were hired to do. Wouldn't you know it, Lane Kiffin was right! Jamarcus Russell, you're out. Calvin Johnson, you're in. It should have been a no-brainer in theory, as the Raiders had just traded away Randy Moss for a 4th-round pick, which was used to select John Bowie out of the University of Cincinnati. Acquiring a Hall of Fame receiver after trading away another Hall of Fame receiver would be a no-brainer on paper. But nope, Al Davis was hell-bent on a quarterback who would be out of the league in 3 seasons. The Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers had high hopes for Jonas Mootown, who was selected in the 2nd round in the 2011 draft. However, he had an injury-plagued 2-year campaign with the Chargers and totaled 1 career tackle. The Chargers originally got this draft pick for Antonio Cromartie, I assume because they had to free up space in their daycare, and it did not work out for them. So, instead of Jonas Mootown, the Chargers are going to select Justin Houston. Houston has been an unquestionably consistent player on several teams throughout his NFL career. He has the 3rd most sacks of any active player, only behind fellow draftees from 2011, Von Miller and Cameron Jordan. Justin Houston was taken 9 picks after Jonas Mootown, and man would the Chargers like to have that one back. The Los Angeles Rams. As good and talented as the 2014 NFL Draft was, the very top of it was not. Jadeveon Clowney was good, but not number 1 overall good. Blake Bortles became a meme rather quickly, and Sammy Watkins was underwhelming despite an impeccable career at Clemson. Greg Robinson, who was selected 2nd overall, might have been the worst of these. Robinson had unreal expectations, but he was out of the NFL after 6 seasons, where afterwards he became the real-life Narcos. So, instead of Gordo Escobar, the Rams are going to take Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack was one of the best linebackers over the last decade. He's bound for the Hall of Fame. And while Robinson was a bust, the Rams heavily rebounded later on in the 1st round when they got Aaron Donald with the 14th pick. Could you imagine a team drafting Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald in the same draft? Good gosh almighty. The Miami Dolphins. In 2013, the Dolphins traded up 9 spots to draft Dion Jordan with a 3rd overall pick. He had insane athletic potential, and his name sounds like he was born to play defensive end. Just for fun, let's look at some other players who sound like they were born to play defensive end but were ultimately mediocre in the league. Solomon Thomas, Tyson Jackson, Andre Wadsworth, Dante Fowler until recently. But what if I told you that all of those dudes were 3rd overall picks? Dion Jordan's career was marred by injuries, off-the-field issues, and a lack of production on the field, as he never had more than 4 sacks in a season. I'm going to swap out the 3rd pick of the 1st round for the 1st pick of the 3rd round, as instead of Dion Jordan, I'm going to have the Dolphins select Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce has been arguably the NFL's best tight end over the last decade, and nowadays he angers fans everywhere when his famous girlfriend appears on screen for more than 2 seconds. Travis Kelce has had a storied career. He's been an All-Pro 7 times, won 3 Lombardi trophies, and has twice as many Pro Bowls as Dion Jordan had starts. But most importantly, he scored the game-winning touchdown in the 2012 Belk Bowl for the Cincinnati Bearcats. The Minnesota Vikings. Defensive players from Georgia aren't always perfect. Lewis Cine was taken with the 32nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, and let's take a look! Oh boy. So instead of the dreadful Lewis Cine, the Vikings are going to take Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a sneaky, explosive running back who's dealt with some injuries, but he's produced well on the field when he's been there. He has more than twice as many all-purpose career touchdowns as Lewis Cine has career defensive snaps. With Aaron Jones seemingly winding down, giving the Vikings a younger and arguably more explosive running back would make the Vikings offense more explosive than it already is. The New England Patriots. The Patriots have not been very good at drafting wide receivers. Perhaps the most notorious case of this is that of N'Keal Harry, who has a career total of 714 yards and 5 touchdowns. The Patriots need a do-over, so instead of N'Keal Harry, they are going to select A.J. Brown. Brown has topped N'Keal Harry's career totals in every individual season he's played. A.J. Brown has been one of the most consistent receivers in the NFL, and he's got a Super Bowl ring to show for it. N'Keal Harry is barely staying afloat as far as his NFL career is concerned, but A.J. Brown is quietly making a Hall of Fame career for himself. The New Orleans Saints. Peyton Turner had a really unremarkable 4-year career with the Saints before he quietly faded into obscurity and signed a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys just this past offseason. But what about them acquiring a player so talented he actually has Saint in his name? Instead of Peyton Turner, with the 28th pick in the 2021 NFL redraft, they are going to select, not you! That's better. I, of course, am talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, son of a former Mr. Universe, who has been one of the most consistent players in the NFL on one of the best offenses in the league. He's been a first-team All-Pro in each of the last 2 seasons, which is a high honor for someone who was taken in the 4th round in 2021 out of USC. He just got a 9-figure contract, and he's entering the prime of his career. The Saints sure would love to have a player with a massive contract who actually produces, right? The New York Giants. The Giants drafting Daniel Jones was an all-time draft blunder, and it set the Giants back for over half a decade. The Giants thought they were getting their franchise quarterback after Eli Manning's era was over, but nope. Instead, they got one of the most inconsistent players of our time. He had brief flashes of success, but he ultimately underwhelmed, as in his 6 seasons with the Giants, he had a record of 24-44-1. They gave him a contract extension instead of Saquon Barkley, and that led the blunder from going from bad to worse. So instead of Daniel Jones, the Giants are going to get a player who has quietly been one of the most consistent players in the league, Jeffrey Simmons. He's made 3 Pro Bowls, he was named a 2nd-team All-Pro twice, and he had the 4th highest PFF grade among defensive tackles who had at least 750 snaps in 2024. Giants fans, does this feel like justice? It doesn't? Well, that's all I got for now. The New York Jets. Like the Browns, I could go with a lot of players here. I could go with Zach Wilson, could go with Vernon Gholston, I could go with Sam Darnold, and frankly, I feel like that's what I should do, but I'm not gonna pick Darnold or Wilson, because even they weren't the worst quarterback decision the Jets have ever made in the draft. Instead, I'm gonna go with the 2nd-round pick, didn't play a single snap in the NFL. That's right, Christian Hackenberg. You know you're bad when you're bad by Jets standards. While Darnold and Wilson showed flashes but ultimately flamed out, Hackenberg never played a snap in the NFL. That's why, instead of the hapless and snapless Christian Hackenberg, I am having the Jets select Dak Prescott. While Hackenberg didn't play a single snap, Dak has been everything the Cowboys could dream of. He's awesome in the regular season and always one step short of the conference title game in the postseason. The Philadelphia Eagles. Remember in the dystopian COVID era when Mike Zimmer was on a Zoom call and he heard the Eagles drafted Jalen Reagor, and then he was like, get Jefferson on the phone. Good times. Reagor was thought of as a good deep threat on an Eagles roster that at the time didn't have a whole lot of receiving talent. Alshon Jeffrey was in the twilight of his career, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was a guy you totally forgot existed, and Travis Fulgham was really fun for about 5 games. So we're erasing that quote from Mike Zimmer from history by having the Eagles pass on Jalen Reagor for Thomas Jefferson. For Justin Jefferson. Jefferson has been a top 3 receiver in the NFL since the moment he joined the league. Just last year, Jefferson got a massive contract extension, while Jalen Reagor's career has been a cavalcade of mediocrity. The Pittsburgh Steelers. As the Steelers exited the Ben Roethlisberger era, they tried to replace him with Kenny Pickett, who was woefully unproductive in his 2-season stint with the Steelers. But the 2022 NFL draft class, particularly for quarterbacks, was dreadful. So they had slim pickings. Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi, and Skylar Thompson. But wait, there was one exception, so let's take him here. Instead of Kenny Pickett, with the 20th pick in 2022, the Steelers are going to take the Iowa State wonder kid, Brock Purdy. He was Mr. Irrelevant in the 2022 NFL Draft, but he rose from his status as that to become a legit starter in the NFL, and he just got his massive 5-year extension. You've got to go for the actual proven starter who wasn't recently called the worst quarterback at Browns minicamp. Perhaps if they had taken Purdy, they wouldn't have to groan while Aaron Rodgers signs a contract and limps them to 9-8. You reap what you sow, morons. The San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers move for Trey Lance in the 2021 NFL Draft might be one of the worst trade-ups in NFL Draft history. They sold the farm for a guy who is now a backup on the Chargers. Had Trey Lance not gone down to injury in 2022, and had Brock Purdy not exploded onto the scene, Trey Lance theoretically could still have a job. We'll never know. And boy, are the 49ers lucky that Purdy panned out. Now, I could give them Jamar Chase here, but with the litany of weapons that San Francisco has, I'm not going to do that. Let's solidify the trenches instead. Instead of Trey Lance, with the 3rd pick in the 2021 NFL redraft, the 49ers are going to select Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell, who I wanted in a bad way prior to the 2021 draft, was everything Dan Campbell could have hoped for. Get Penei Sewell opposite Trent Williams and solidify the line for Purdy. The Seattle Seahawks. In 2021, Dwayne Eskridge was a major miss for the Seahawks, as he totaled 17 receptions, 122 yards, and 1 touchdown in his 3 seasons with Seattle. He did get bit by the injury bug, which is unfortunate, as he had a major concussion in his first career game. He broke his hand, and he broke his collarbone. But you know what Seattle needs badly to this day? A stout offensive line. Instead of Dwayne Eskridge, the Seahawks are going to select Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey is exactly the kind of player that Seattle would love as Sam Darnold begins his tenure in Seattle. Creed Humphrey has 2 Super Bowl rings to his name, a handful of All-Pro nods, a few Pro Bowls, and he still has a very long career ahead of him. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Never trade up for a kicker. Never trade back up into the 2nd round for a kicker. Never, ever! Roberto Aguayo was such a good college kicker, he was given the nickname Mr. Perfect. However, Roberto Aguayo had a rough tenure in Tampa, which lasted only 1 season. He was 22 of 31 from field goal range, including 1 for 3 in his final game and 4 of 11 from 40-plus yards. He was released from Tampa after 1 season, after which NFL squads played hot potato with him. So, instead of Roberto Aguayo, the Bucs are going to select Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard was a mainstay on Tennessee's defense for 8 seasons, where he was twice named a first-team All-Pro, and he had a career-high 130 tackles with the Bears in 2024. For a Bucs secondary that badly needs a player that doesn't get injured when the wind changes direction, a redo with Kevin Byard makes total sense. The Tennessee Titans. Isaiah Wilson was bonkers bad with the Titans. He played 4 total snaps and was kicked off the Titans after 1 year for being an absolute head case. He then signed with Miami and was kicked off of their team merely days later. He then spent time on the Giants practice squad and in a music studio making a rap album that's barely on the internet. So, we're passing on Isaiah Wilson and instead selecting a player that pains me to put on another team, T. Higgins. I do not feel good giving up the king to another team, especially after I had to watch every team stroke their to the idea of signing him, but I guess I have to. He's been one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL, and the Titans, who barely have a wide receiver 1, would greatly benefit from T's services. The Washington Commanders. Dan Snyder is evil and undeserving of second chances, so we're ignoring all players from his era. F*** him. Josh Harris? We like him around here, so I'll give him a do-over. Emmanuel Forbes did not produce much during his 1.5-season tenure with the Commanders, and he's now in the Rams. So, instead of Emmanuel Forbes, the Washington Commanders are going to select Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez has been a rapidly ascending cornerback in the NFL over the last season. While he had an injury-plagued rookie season, his 2nd season saw him be a 2nd-team All-Pro. Washington has had an up-and-down pass defense over the last few years, so Christian Gonzalez would be a major upgrade over a guy who, well, he's not even on the team anymore. And that's all I've got for this video. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more sports content that you didn't ask for.